Hey guys, I'm putting the final touches on this Motorola portable set. Right now I am doing an alignment. I was hoping to demonstrate this vintage RCA WR514A TV sweep channel list, but it's just not working properly. I picked this up about a year ago for 99 cents, and I've never actually tried using it till now, and it seemed to be working okay for a little while, and then it just stopped sweeping. I do get a fixed frequency output, and I can vary the range with this, but it doesn't sweep. It was sounding kind of funky when I would increase the sweep width, and it just stopped working altogether. I think this might use a motor-driven variable capacitor, and I think there's an issue with it. So, I won't be showing you that today, but I can use the equipment that I've used in the past. It's kind of a shame because this is the first 44 megahertz IF set that I've done an alignment on. That's why I was hoping I could use this, because this has a whole bunch of markers at fixed frequencies. For example, there's two key frequencies they show in the alignment instructions. One is 42.25, one is 45.75, and they do have markers for those. So you can flip these switches and they turn on various markers. So I could have more than one marker at once, in other words. Whereas with the setup I've been using, I only have one variable marker and fixed markers at 10 megahertz increments and 1 megahertz increments. So the built-in markers that this WaveTech puts out at 1 and 10 megahertz don't really do me any good, because I need 42 and a quarter and 45 and 3/4. So I will have to use my Leader 17A. I took a marker and put some tick marks on here, key frequency, so at least I can go back and forth and not have to keep referring to my frequency counter. What I did is I hooked up this to my frequency counter, found all the key frequencies shown in the sweep alignment instructions, and I made tick marks on the dial scale. I can clean those up with alcohol afterwards. Alright, so right now, let me play my setup here. It turns out that the test jacks I mentioned in an earlier video turned out to be pretty useful. So, I'll show those here. So this is the version of the chassis I have. So you hook up your scope here to the video detector's test points, and here's where you can access other key voltages. In particular, you're supposed to put -3 volts on the AGC bus to disable the AGC set. I rigged up a couple little plugs, and I've got my 3-volt source here. And there's my scope hooked up. You're supposed to go through a 45 or 47K series resistor, so you don't load down the circuit. And here's where you feed the signal in through a series capacitor. And there's one test point here where you inject a signal, and later on you do it there. So I am right here at this point where I fed my signal into the second IF test jack, and now I'm supposed to adjust coils to get it to look like that. That's not too horrible the way it is. So one key point is 42.25, and that's about where it should be. It's supposed to be just to the left of the peak there. 45.75 should be just to the right of the peak on the other side. And that one's bad. So I'll put my variable marker over 45.75, and, well, I guess it's not too bad either. Yeah, so I'm going to just see if I can clean up the symmetry a little bit and try to reduce this dip in the middle as much as possible. So yeah, when they show there, it's not quite so pronounced. And then I'll move on to these steps. The coils you adjust are these guys here. There's one here and one here. They have slugs down inside the cans, and they have hexagonal or octagonal hole in them, so you need one of these alignment tools here, and you'll locate the coil there. I'm locked in, and now you can see when I tweak that coil, it has a pretty significant effect. So I will twiddle these coils until I get a decent looking response. So for the first part of the alignment, the waveform I just showed you, things weren't too bad. I tweaked it just a tad. Step 2, things were off a little bit more, but again, not too bad. Well, now I'm up to step 3. And what I've got looks significantly different than it's supposed to, so hopefully I can tweak these two coils here, L11 and L101, or rather L102, and I got it to look better. And then when I hook the picture tube back up, we should get a sharper picture. Oh, by the way, I should have mentioned that one of the instructions was to unplug the yoke. That's why there's no picture on the screen right now. Alright, that's looking a lot better. So that completes the IF alignment. Next I'll disconnect all this stuff and hook the picture tube yoke back up, and then I'll feed in a signal from a converter box on channel 3 or 4, and then I'll tweak the slugs down in there, the individual oscillator slugs, to get the best possible picture and sound. Alright, let's see if that alignment did this set any good.
It's stored in liquid form, and then it is regenerated and recycled in some way that has to do with these circuits. Just sound like you don't look quite so optimistic.
Yeah, I'd say that looks pretty good.
The system's slowly losing.
That's so good, I'm not going to mess around with tweaking those oscillator coils at all. So I guess the last thing to do will be to get a test pattern generator going, so I can tweak the vertical linearity. Looks like it's off a little bit to me. But otherwise, not bad. And I'm especially glad to see is that before I had some pretty bad streaking, like when the channel identifier would be up there with that harsh white on black, and it was really like telegraphing white streaks across the screen. Sounds really good too.
Okay, man. Explain it. I'm just trying to keep the commune together. Like how, for instance? Like keeping your bike club here for protection. Yeah? Well, they are spinning.
I fired up my Sencor VA62 and I've been tweaking the picture settings. I think it's looking pretty good right now. There's a little bit of pin cushioning on the right edge, but there's really no adjustment for that. Perhaps it would be possible to mount a small magnet somewhere on the CRT or yoke, but I don't really know. I've never tried anything like that. I don't think it's too bad. And as for the bandwidth, not too bad. I think it's about the same as the Philco Town and Country I restored recently, with the last two bars here you really can't see. I think that corresponds to around 4 and 4.5 megahertz or thereabouts. So we got a bandwidth up to about 3.5 megahertz, which isn't too bad for a basic set like this. I've been cleaning up the cabinet as best I can, just using some automotive products like Scratch Out and Meguiar's Cleaner Wax. And it's looking a heck of a lot better, but I think that's about as good as it's going to get without a stripping and repainting. It certainly feels nice and smooth, but there is some rust creeping through here and there, just like in a car, and it's starting to bubble up. And some scuffs here and there, but like I said, a lot better than it was. Same goes for the front. I had popped the safety plastic out and buffed that up quite a bit with Novus 1, 2, and 3. There's a stress crack in one corner, and that corner originally had been up at the top, and I rotated the glass around to put it into a bottom corner because it's less visible there. See, the plastic rides up or rides down a bit on the top, on this side, whereas it goes all the way to the bottom on the other side. So still a little bit visible, but not too bad. Alright, so with all that cleaned up, I'm going to start putting it together. Did not have any luck with knobs, unfortunately. I found this awesome photo online of what one in really mint condition looks like. Well, I went hunting through all my knobs and I found nothing, so I'm just going to stick with the knobs that it came with for now until I can find something better. I had the set all back together and I was about to put the back on when I figured I better do a power-up test. And when I did, I had some weird crackling issues and the vertical was collapsing. I noticed when I would fiddle with the vertical height control, the height would sometimes pop back to full height and then shrink back down, more arcing and sparking. And so I had to pull the chassis back out, unfortunately. I think I found the culprit down in here. There's a little bit of solder that must have broken loose from something and gotten inside of the potentiometer. Down right in there. So I'll clear that out and put it back together and keep my fingers crossed that that will solve the problem. Alright, I removed the solder glob, reassembled the set one more time, and now it is playing fine. So that leaves one more task, which is to reattach the back. Before I can do that, I need to replace the power cord. It had been set in here, but it was in pretty miserable shape, so I cut it out. There's hacks in the cord, and some of them were covered up with electrical tape, so that's just got to go. So the challenge is to find a replacement power cord that's got the right kind of molding so it'll snap into that opening. I had to dig through all my cheater cords for a while to find just the right type. The first few I found that the right type of snap and molding were polarized. Until finally I found one that has the snap and molding and is unpolarized. It looks like it's polarized, but that's just a bad molding job. Both of these openings are actually the same size. So this will plug in all right on here. Now, as I think I mentioned earlier, it's not a bad idea to rewire this to be polarized, but that would require removing this and putting a polarized plug on it. The polarized plug has a pin that's smaller. If it was just a matter of one was the same size as this and one was bigger, perhaps one could slip a brass collar over this to enlarge the diameter and then it would fit. But that smaller one is just too small, it won't fit on there, so you would need to somehow get a smaller pin on one side and actually a little bit larger on the other side, because the large size is just too big. And I'm sure that was intentional when they started making polarized sets, that neither one of these holes is actually the same size as they used in the non-polarized days. The replacement power cord fit just perfectly into the back, which I've now reattached. Notice there's traces of what was an old antenna here. I don't know if that was original to the set or if that was an aftermarket accessory. I do see them show up now and then on eBay, so maybe eventually I can pick one up. In the meantime, I've hooked up a 75 ohm to 300 ohm balun, and I've hooked it up to my analog cable source. So let's take one last look at this set playing.
only got 27 more payments to make on it.
I'm sorry, Fred, but after what happened here tonight,
Alright, so that's playing quite well.
I'm sorry about that, Donna. I was going to tell you, but you ran away. And you know I love you. And the only reason I was going to fight Osgood is because I was jealous of
So I'm going to call this project done. I hope you enjoyed this little restoration series on a Motorola 14P3 from about 1956.
Well, then why don't you say it?
Okay. I got a dummy for a son.
No. No, I mean the part about your loving me.
I love you.